grind, unwind. David Miller, Mike Killer, stories intertwined. Color so slick, you'll swear it's a movie. Insightful, delightful, laid back and groovy. Miller time, get ready to roll. David's got the knowledge, gonna stir your soul. Press play, no delay, let's ride this wave. Miller time, prime time, wisdom, healing, crave.
Well, it's a new day. Yes, it is. And for you wrestling fans, you understand what that means. But the Atlanta Falcons have made a change. And after a 4-game winning streak and what I thought would be more of the same for next year, thinking that Raheem Morris has saved his job after you rattle off wins against the Cardinals and the Buccaneers and the Rams, and then finishing off with the Saints, I thought Raheem has done enough now to, I guess, keep his job, and will stay the same for next year because that's kind of how this organization works. But to my surprise, late Saturday night, we got a couple of changes. First, start off with Coach Morris being relieved as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And then shortly after that, we learned that our general manager, Terry Fontenot, is no longer with the organization as well. So 2 big changes after 2 seasons for Raheem Morris. Terry Fontenot had been there. I think this was like his 5th year now. He was there when the previous coach Arthur Smith, was hired. So now he's gone, and a new regime will be coming in. So as excited as I am that Arthur Blank has made a decision and did something that he normally doesn't do, you also have to be a little cautious as well, because yes, this move needed to be made. You cannot finish with the same record, 8-9. You think about this: the Falcons, the Panthers, the Buccaneers all finish with a record of 8-9. And the only reason the Atlanta Falcons are not playing in the postseason is because of losses like to the Jets. You also lost a 1-point game to the New England Patriots, who, by the way, were like the number 2 seed in the AFC. You lost to the Indianapolis Colts in overtime. Too many close losses, whereas a more disciplined team, you find ways to win that game and you find ways to get into the playoffs. You can't have more of this 8-9 seasons. We've been doing this forever. It used to be 7-9 before they went to the 17-game season. Now it's just 8-9. And you're good enough to win this division. Now, that's not saying much at all. The NFC South is garbage, and it's been garbage for a long time. Proof of the Buccaneers and now the Panthers winning the division, and winning the division with a losing record, right? The fact that that happened on your watch with all the talent around you is unacceptable. And thankfully, Arthur Blank has made a decision where things have to change. And hopefully with that change comes success. Now, we'll see. Again, it's not going to be success overnight. I'm not expecting that. I don't expect the Falcons to go from 8-9 to the number 1 seed in the NFC for next year. Those are not realistic expectations, right? But you hope to see improvement. You hope to see a discipline. You hope to see games where you should win, you actually do win. And you hope with the new regime, whoever that is, that will start to happen. You start to hear rumors of Matt Ryan being involved now, being maybe the president of football operations. That sounds great. You know, everyone in Atlanta loves Matt Ryan, probably the greatest quarterback in the franchise of Atlanta football. But also, being honest, hasn't done the job before, right? So you're cautiously optimistic. Can he do the job? I believe so. I believe he can go out and hire a great general manager and find a great head coach that will fit this organization to help it be successful. But then you also start hearing rumors that he may want to keep his CBS job, which he's really, really good at as well. And so what does that look like with this organization? Can you make that work? Can you marry the two so that he can be successful in both? And I don't know. There's so much time between now and when the season starts and before the offseason actually begins, because for NFL, we're just now beginning the playoffs. So a lot to digest and a lot to happen for the Falcons going forward. But I do think they made the right decision in letting Coach Morris go and letting the general manager go as well. And hopefully, one time, the Atlanta Falcons can get this right and get the right general manager and the right head coach for the players that they have. What's frustrating as an Atlanta Falcons fan is you've seen franchise players, great players, waste away here in Atlanta. You had guys like Michael Vick. You had guys like Roddy White. You brought in guys like Tony Gonzalez. You had guys like Julio Jones. You had guys like Matt Ryan. And now you have guys like Bijan Robinson and Drake London and a defense that's actually really, really good when it can be, when it needs to be. And you're wasting that talent away. We've seen it happen time and time again where you got great talent, but you don't execute and you don't capitalize on that great talent. And you waste the good years that you have with that talent. So hopefully they pulled the trigger. They got rid of the coach in 2 years. They didn't wait any longer, which I think most people would agree with. That has to happen. But now you got to make the right hire going forward. And let's not just jump to conclusions, right? There's going to be guys that are coaching in the NFL playoffs until the Super Bowl that you're going to probably want to talk to. So let's see how that plays out. And let's see who they want to bring in and how serious Arthur Blank is when it comes to Matt Ryan and his role and how he can help decipher and decide who's going to be the next GM. And then those two decide who's going to be the next coach that will fit the group of players that we have here in Atlanta. So even though the season ended on a mixed note, you won 4 games in a row, but you finished with the same record as the Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you missed the playoffs again. There's still hope for next year because there's going to be new voices coming into the building and hopefully a renewed spirit, and hopefully we'll see the effects of that on the field for next year. That's the Atlanta Falcons. Now to your beloved Georgia Bulldogs. Unfortunately for the Georgia Bulldogs, bad habits came back to haunt them. And one of the things I've talked about throughout this season for the Georgia Bulldogs was their defense. I'm telling you, people. I'm telling you. I don't necessarily think Mike Bobo is a problem. We still have bad feelings for Mike Bobo from when he was here with Mark Richt. And we're still blaming him for problems in 2009 and 2010 and 2011. This offense has been pretty good. And if we're being completely honest, when your offense scores 34 points like it did in the Sugar Bowl, your team should win those games. The reason you didn't win those games is because of your defense and those bad habits that you had all year that you corrected the last month of football. They came back to haunt you one last time. The bad habits of bad tackling. That's one thing. The Georgia Bulldogs could not tackle at all on the Sugar Bowl. We couldn't get, 1, to Trinidad Chambliss at all. 2, Keywan Lacey, we couldn't tackle him at all. You look at the stats, Trinidad Chambliss threw for over 300 yards. How many quarterbacks can say they do that against the Georgia defense? Not many, but he did. The last game, the game in Athens, Keywan Lacey rushed, I think they said for 32 or 34 yards total for the entire game. He finished with 98 yards, so basically 100 yards in the Sugar Bowl. He surpassed his first game total in the first quarter of the Sugar Bowl. So you knew then that this was not going to be easy for the Georgia Bulldogs. But those bad habits of not being able to tackle, busted coverage, not being able to contain a really good quarterback, they came back and they haunted you one last time in the biggest game of the year. You let's just say it. You choked. You did. Now, that is not to take away anything from the Ole Miss football team. That is a really good football team. And I told you on the last podcast that I talked about before the Sugar Bowl that even though I thought Georgia could win that game and probably should win that game, that offense is legit. They are legit because that first game they played you in Athens, they had 5 straight scoring touchdown drives, right? And so you knew they could score. And guess what? They did score against us in the Sugar Bowl. We could not stop Trinidad Chambliss. And you have to give your hats off to the Ole Miss coaching staff and to those players for executing a tremendous game plan. They deserve to win that game. They played well, and they outplayed Georgia. And this is something that most times you don't get to hear when you play a Kirby Smart team. They outcoached Georgia. Kirby Smart was outcoached against Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. And we're not just going to point to the fake punt or the second fake punt or whatever it is. He was outcoached. He was. And what's frustrating as a Georgia fan is this is 2 Sugar Bowls in a row that he was outcoached. And not only was this team outcoached, just like in last year's Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame, this team was out-physicaled. And Kirby talked about that during the game. Ole Miss was more physical than Georgia. And that rarely happens against a Georgia team. You rarely see another team be more physical than a Kirby Smart coach team. But Ole Miss was more physical, and they outcoached this team. So credit to Ole Miss and what they're able to do. We could harp on the fake punt, 4th and 2, 4th and 3 from your own 30 with 10 minutes left to go, and you're only down 3 points. You heard the explanation from Coach Smart after the game is that ball was never supposed to be snapped anyway. And it was. And when you start to dissect the play, yeah, you have a young center in during that play because Drew Bobo was hurt. So that's your number 1 center. He wasn't playing. You have a young center in, and he made a mistake apparently. He was never supposed to snap the ball. And you could tell that by the way Gunner reacted and by the way the offensive line didn't move at all. My argument would be you should never put your players in that position. You're only down 3 points. You still have a pretty good defense. Don't put your players in that position. Just punt the ball away and see where it goes. And you can second guess this all day long, all night long, and all off season long. But at the end of the day, you're outcoached, you were outplayed, and the better team that day won. Ole Miss was a better team. Better coach team, better team that executed well, and more physical team. And I'll be interested to see what they do against Miami going into the Fiesta Bowl. Now, if you want to look at the bright side for Georgia, a couple of bright things to look forward to. Georgia is one of the youngest teams in the SEC. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, this team exceeded expectations. If you look at the preseason and where most of the analysts predicted this team to finish, you had a lot of analysts, and I think David Pollock was one of them, that said this team could easily be 9-3, 8-4, looking at that schedule with Texas and Alabama and Ole Miss and on the road against Tennessee and then a Georgia Tech team. So there's a lot of people who predicted Georgia to have 3 losses easily. The fact that this team went 11-1 with the youth that they have, won the SEC, got a bye, and got back to the Sugar Bowl, they exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Now, as Georgia fans, we're spoiled. Look at the banner behind me, won national championships. We've been back-to-back national champions. So you expect to win. Kirby talked about that. Pressure is a privilege. You put that pressure on yourself, and that's a privilege to have that type of pressure. So that's not an excuse for not being able to finish the job, but it gives you hope for next year that if you can keep these key components in, which in the world of NIL and in the world of the transfer portal, those are big ifs. If you can keep this young group together, you got some high expectations for next year too. You really do. And so we'll see what that looks like. And hopefully you keep the core guys together and you run it back and see another year with Gunner, who I think played well. And I can't not talk about this. What Gunner Stockton did in that Sugar Bowl, if you weren't a fan of Gunner Stockton before, whether you're a Georgia fan or not, that guy gave everything he could for this program during that game. He got absolutely destroyed multiple times. And he always got back up and he answered the bell. Never complained, never came off the field. That one play where he throws it the last possible moment and gets absolutely demolished, where you're thinking there's no way he's getting up. He gets up, and guess what? He actually scores the touchdown on the very next play. This guy is the reason that other teammates love to play for him, because of his toughness, that he always gets up and he answers the bell. And with leadership like that, not necessarily verbal leadership, he's not going to be the guy in the locker room giving the speech and on top of the table, rah, whatever it is. He does it with his actions. And I don't care if you're a Georgia fan, Ole Miss fan, Alabama fan, whatever. You respect players who play like that because they play their tails off for that university. And I'm impressed with what he did this year. A full season as a starter, 11-1, SEC championship and got your team to the Sugar Bowl. Now, next year you got to get over the hump. You do. This year's been great. You probably over-exceeded expectations. Next year, there is more pressure on this team to be better, and you need to be better for next year. Now, college football playoffs, we're down to 4. The final 4, Ole Miss versus Miami, Indiana versus Oregon. So let's start with the first game, which will be on Thursday in the Fiesta Bowl, Ole Miss versus Miami. 2 great teams, 2 teams that no one probably predicted to be there in that semifinal game. What do you expect? Really depends on what Miami's defense can do. Can they contain Trinidad Chambliss? Can they? What they did against Texas A&M, what they did against Ohio State, super impressive. This team, and I said it before, this Miami defense is legit. And they will keep them in every single game. I didn't think they could do it for as long as they did against Ohio State, but they did. Can they do it now against Ole Miss and Trinidad Chambliss? Or can Trinidad Chambliss, could he be the story of the playoffs? Could he be that guy, that transfer guy? It really reminds me a lot of like a Stetson Bennett. Transfer guy, goes out, has success. Stetson was JUCO. This guy was like, Division III, wins the national championship, gets brought in, and all he does is plays his heart out, and he's successful. No one thought he should be here. Had no offers. But here he is, 2 wins away from a possible national championship. So that's a great matchup. It is hard for me to pick right now against Miami and what that defense is doing. And I saw Ole Miss firsthand. Now, if Ole Miss's defense, if their defensive line can manage the Miami offensive line like they did Georgia, and that's where Kirby talked about they were more physical than us. Ole Miss's defensive line was more physical than us. They do that against Miami, they're going to have opportunities to create turnovers and give their offense short fields, which puts pressure on the Miami defense. But Miami's defense is legit, and they're 1 win away from playing in a national championship in their home stadium. So they're going to be fired up. If I had to guess right now, I got to go Miami. It is tough to pick against that defense right now. What they did against Ohio State was super impressive. Now, I don't know if that's a compliment to Miami or was that a knock on Ohio State? Because for the entire season, everybody said Ohio State was this world beater. And the last 2 games, they scored 14 points or 10 points against Indiana and then 14 points against Miami. So Miami's defense legit. If they can contain Trinidad Chambliss and they can slow down the run of Kewan Lacey, which Georgia was not able to do. Again, you do those things, then I would have a hard time picking against Miami. So I think Miami is going to be playing for a national championship in their home stadium. Now, who are they going to play? We saw again in the Georgia Ole Miss game, it is tough to beat an opponent twice. Georgia couldn't do it. If you saw earlier in the postseason, Oklahoma couldn't do it. They beat Alabama in the regular season. They could not beat them in the postseason. Georgia beat Ole Miss in the regular season. They could not beat Ole Miss in the postseason. So can Indiana beat Oregon for a second time in the season? And I will tell you this. What Indiana did to Alabama in the Rose Bowl was super impressive. Super impressive. Didn't just beat Alabama, they destroyed Alabama. 38-3. The game was not even close. This Indiana team is the real deal. We had so many questions like, are they really that good? They play in the Big Ten. Have they played anybody? Yeah, they beat Oregon on the road. And then they beat Ohio State. Well, is Ohio State that good? No, Indiana's really good. And the reason they're really good is they're a well-coached football team with players who don't make mistakes and don't beat themselves. And that's why they're really good. They do not make mistakes that beat themselves. So what I saw, again, it can change from game to game because, again, they're collegiate athletes and they're young men. It's going to be hard to beat Indiana. So I got Indiana beating Oregon a second time in Atlanta in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And I got my national championship. It's going to be Indiana versus Miami now, right? And it is going to be tough to beat Indiana. It really is. They are super impressive. That coach has them, what he says, they're humble and hungry, and you can see it. And the look on their face. I love when an offensive lineman is the Rose Bowl MVP, an offensive lineman, Rose Bowl MVP, and the rest of the teammates go crazy for that guy. That's special. That's special buy-in that they're playing for each other. And this Indiana team, who would have thought that the first team to ever go 16-0 in college football? It may not be the Blue Blood. It may not be the Alabama or the Notre Dames or the Ohio States or the Georgias. The first team to go 16-0 in college football could very well be the Indiana Hoosiers. We'll find out. Well, let's get to our verse of the day. So I told you I've been reading in Mark here recently, and one of the things I want to bring to our attention, especially for this new year, is we always want to be great, right? How do we be great? We want to be great. We want to do great things. We want to be great leaders, great fathers, great husbands, great brothers, great sisters. But how do we be great? And in Mark, Jesus tells us how we can be great. In Mark 10:42, verses 42 and 44 through 44, Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all." So the message is there. If you want to be first, you got to be last. And if you want to be great, you have to serve. So as we start this new year, 2026, who are you going to serve? Do you want to be great? And do you want to be first? Jesus tells us how do we become great and how to be first. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, if you can do two things today, love God and love one another. But if you can only do one thing today, love someone the way that Jesus has loved you. Thanks again.